So Rivals of Ixalan is basically a story about a race that everybody's trying to get somewhere first. So the cool thing for you, the players, you're part of the race, but the racers are the tribes themselves.
As we were designing Rivals of Ixalan, we knew exactly what the 4 tribes were. There was no room there for one of the tribes to fall off a cliff or for a new tribe to, beam in from space. We knew who they were. They were continuing their race for the Golden City, and this time they were going to find it. So it was definitely a continuation of the story. In some senses, that could have been limiting. We knew where the outer walls were. But in other cases, that gave us the freedom to focus exactly on, all right, how do we advance? How do we delve deeper into what these tribes are, what they do, where they could go?
So often what we do in a tribal set is the first set will have some amount of tribal, but then the second set just turns up the knob a little bit. That was true in Innistrad, for example, where Dark Ascension had a little bit more tribal than Innistrad did. And that same right here, in that, Ixalan had clearly a bunch of tribal, but Rivals of Ixalan, just a little bit more.
Forerunner of the Legion is a member of a 4-card cycle where each tribe has the ability to let you tutor up a card out of your deck and then put it on top, and then it rewards you next turn when you inevitably, surprise, draw that card and play it. They're designed by Mark Gottlieb. The goal he was going there for was to give you a tribal bonus for something where your entire deck is going to be playing that tribe, but also create something where if maybe you only have 1 or 2 of that card in the deck, you can still get some quality use out of that card. Because early on in a draft, you don't know whether you're going to be playing a ton of this or only a couple of this, and we wanted to make sure you're picking up those tribal rewards early to give you direction.
In Ixalan, the vampires were a go-wide small creature deck, and in Rivals of Ixalan, the vampires are more mid-range. So one of the cards we have is Champion of Dusk, which in playtesting, the play design team called it Gristle Vampire, because when it enters the battlefield, you lose a bunch of life and draw a bunch of cards equal to the number of vampires you have in play, and we just thought it was a funny comparison.
As a graveyard aficionado, Oathsworn Vampire is actually one of my favorite cards in the set. From an editing standpoint, I definitely looked around for some killer combos to make sure that we checked everything in FFL. Whenever you can cast things multiple times, you've got to open up that sacrifice deck potentiality. I'll certainly enjoy building one in Standard myself.
Paladin of Atonement cares about losing life. One of the things we liked about that is that it means different things in different formats. In Standard, you can play it with a Danto Vanguard and trigger it whenever you want if you're beating down on your opponent. Whereas in Modern, maybe you're playing it with fetch lands and it triggers right away on turn 2 when you play it.
Twilight Prophet was designed during an exploration for more mythic rares, specifically ones that could bring Ascend into the game. We started out looking for demons, because demons are this iconic creature type. Nobody bats an eye when they see a demon at Mythic, and it felt like it might be a good place to have one here. We wound up not going with that and turning it into a vampire when we reversed the effect to punish your opponents instead of punishing you.
When designing and playtesting Ascend, we discovered there was 2 primary ways that a deck could achieve Ascension, get to 10 permanents. Either you were an aggressive deck and you just dumped your entire hand out and got to 10 permanents that way, or you were a control deck and you played a lot of walls and treasure and things like that. Sky Marcher Aspirant is an example of the first one, where this card is clearly something you want to play on turn 1. It's really good at a 1-mana 2/1, and then as the game goes on and you hit 10 permanents and you're kind of getting stalled out on the ground, he gains flying, so all of a sudden your deck still has some late game where you can fly over all your opponent's stuff, those walls that those control decks are naturally playing.
Elenda the Dusk Rose is a really interesting figure. She's a religious figure to the vampires of the Legion of Dusk. She was the first vampire, kind of the progenitor of this whole way of life or undeath. And so when the vampires come here to Ixalan, they're not expecting to find her. She is a saint. She's considered a saint, and here she is in the flesh, rising from her resting place. And she's not entirely pleased about the way that they've been conducting themselves.
One of the easiest ways to push on the tribal themes that we presented in Ixalan is to keep pushing on very linear things. Lords are one of the Magic classics as far as linear tribal strategies go. To that end, we knew we wanted to make some. Which ones we make is a different decision. We had a Merfolk one in the file for a long time. I think it's basically just as printed. We really didn't change much about it, because we also were hoping to maybe introduce Blue-Green Merfolk to Modern and make that another spin on this archetype that people could enjoy and learn in a new way. Merfolk as a tribe have always had this sort of growing and going wide sensibility to them. We make tons of merfolk lords, but at the same time we keep them cheap. We keep you wanting to spread the love across multiple merfolk. Deeproot Elite does exactly that. He gets taller all on his own, and he tells you, fill your deck with merfolk, make me huge, attack with all of these guys. Seafloor Oracle is a really popular card internally. It's on that track of cards we're thinking, maybe this will give merfolk a little life in Constructed, both possibly in Standard and Modern. It pays you off for, again, doing what you want to do, attack your opponent and explore a tribal linear.
One of the fun things about a world like Ixalan, a set like Rivals of Ixalan, is that we're working off of some really well-established ideas from stories. Pirates in particular, dinosaurs have some stuff like this as well. And we really sometimes just get to go for it, get to give something the most obvious name or a name that wouldn't make sense in another setting, something like Sea Red. You know, it has a color word in it, like that is a really weird card name, but the idea of a pirate seeing red and needing to fight is just so perfect, you know, or Mutiny or Sea Legs, you know, back from Ixalan you have things like Walk the Plank, or even just the straightforward Commune with Dinosaurs is another favorite of mine. We just get to go for it and give something the most obvious, most fun name because this is supposed to be fun.
There is sometimes a funny tension between top-down design and creative, where the design team will make something that is clearly just a captain's hook, and I go through this struggle of, can I really just call it Captain's Hook, or do I need to give it a more creative name? And initially I gave it a different name, which I don't remember now, and one of the first comments that came back was, really, this is just a Captain's Hook. So that's what the card became.
Angrath is a pirate planeswalker who is the only Minotaur on Ixalan. So we have our only Gorgon on Ixalan, and we now have a Minotaur character. We went through a lot of changes on Angrath's backstory as his character developed, and he's kind of just a angry, stranded person. He's basically on his own prison planet and has been for who knows how long, and his one desire is to get off this rock.
In designing pirates, a lot of them wanted to take things away from your opponent because, hey, that's what pirates are all about, stealing. But we can only have so many of those designs because there's only so much of stealing we can do in Magic and still have it be fun. So Dead Man's Chest is pretty cool because, well, you give it to your opponent's creatures first. Here, take this chest, and then you steal it from them.
We knew we wanted a card called Mutiny, and we got it. It's an interesting card in that we could not gain consensus on exactly how powerful this card is. It can kill a sizable creature for just 1 red mana, but only under certain circumstances. It's a very interesting card.
One of the things that we needed to do in Rivals of Ixalan is take Ixalan keywords, come up with new spins, new ideas. Tomb Robber is a great example of one of those. He's a pirate that takes Explore and has you think about it in a different way. Often you would be thinking about Explore helping you make your land drops or helping you grow your creatures. Maybe even the pseudo-scribe functionality. With Tomb Robber, he's actually directly converting those lands into growth. You can't lose. His Explore is always find +1/+1 counters.
The times that I drafted pirates in Rivals of Ixalan, Direfleet Netbreaker was usually the card that put me right into pirates. It's one of these signpost uncommons that loudly says, hey, look at me, you should go pirates, and it did its job.
Ixalan was a pretty fun and lively set, but I really tried to dial up the action even further in Rivals of Ixalan, because before, you know, it was an exploration toward a central place, and now that everyone's there, it's a frenzy. It's, you know, a game of race to the center. And you see a lot more group-on-group fighting in Rivals of Ixalan as well, like cards like Hornswoggle, where there's a pirate, you know, beating up a vampire. You saw it a little bit in Ixalan, and now it's just more. Cards like Reckless Rage, where there's a dinosaur actively destroying a pirate ship. You know, it's just, it's been dialed up to 11 this time.